This conference will now be recorded.
Is we have a charger, we have a couple of chargers, but we also have a couple of
This monies, we had a whole whopping $20 last year, so we budgeted about the same. So again, this budget is broken out into 4 quarters. We were expecting $5, but we got 645. So this percentage is way off. So we were a little surprised to see this. Some of the expense line items, you'll see that we're well over budget. Some of them were a bit under budget. I think it's also important to understand that some of these revenues we will not see until a little further on in the fiscal year. Our property taxes we won't see until December and May, and that's the bulk of our revenues. And also the PILT that comes in the last quarter.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, please. So if I'm understanding correctly, and thank you for this is really nice, the way it's laid out. I like it. 409 on the PILT, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong line number. 430,000, are we saying that that's what we have in there on the PILT? Because I know, like you said, we're not going to get it till the 4th quarter, but if you look at 24, 25, it does say 430,000?
That's the annual budget broken into 4 quarters.
Okay,
but
you just
we won't
divided
get
it
that.
between.
Yes.
Got it, okay. Okay, got it, I understand, thank you.
And Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Emily. This is, and Wendy, that this is, I think this is a really helpful way of laying this out. But maybe could we do like what you just did with the cannabis revenue? And if there's a place where we're off in either direction, like walk through some of those.
Sure.
If we're on target, awesome, and we can kind of see that laid out here. But if there are places where we're either over or under based on what we've budgeted. Maybe if we could go through
Okay.
some of those, if
So,
that
yeah,
makes sense.
we can look at some of the large variances and try
Yeah,
to explain that
exactly.
the best I can. And in some circumstances, I may not be familiar with the historical data, and in those cases, I'll defer to County Manager Madrid to help me out there the best that he can. Put him on the spot. Okay, so GRTs, we're tracking right in line with the budget. We did notice that our 3/4 general food GRT, we're a bit below, and that's something that's going to take a bit of research. County Manager Jaramillo is aware of that, and we discussed yesterday. 93% of our GRTs, 93, 98. Again, we discussed the cannabis monies. It was a little unexpected. Property tax prior year, the county just did its auction, so I think a lot of folks were trying to get caught up on prior year property taxes, so that's a bit over. 95% property taxes, penalty and interest, 11% of this non-rent. This is a very minuscule item, so I'm not super focused on that. Again, 44% animal licenses. Building permits we're seeing were over and above budget. Business licenses were well over above budget. And liquor licenses above budget.
Wow.
Other licenses and permits well above budget. Let's see, this is excavations. Other licenses and permits. So as you can see, we're well above budget on a lot of these line items based on year over year. And again, that kind of gives us an understanding as to what's happening within the county.
And Mr. Chair and Madam Finance Director, some of those, the business license and some of the other permits, it's possible, and I don't know if any of us sitting in the room today right now know, but it's possible related to the short-term rental thing, although I know that just kind of went into effect last week, but I think it did spur people to get their licenses. Could be, just a thought.
I think so. Makes sense.
Okay, so I'm trying to look at other areas. Administrative fees, it's at 19%. The reason why that's so low is that is a joint powers agreement between the county and E911, and we won't see that first payment made until probably next week. So we'll start seeing those. They come in on a quarterly basis. So that's going to be below average.
Use the numbers, yeah.
0%, okay, fiscal agent, and clerks. Election fees. Election fees, this was budgeted, but I believe the clerk has its own standalone fund now. So although this was budgeted, this is was put into its standalone fund that we'll look at as we continue through this. Okay. Okay, 190% over franchise fees. And those are the fees that the county collects from utility type folks, CenturyLink and Comcast to, how did he explain that? Yes. Our investment income is doing very well, 134% over budget and 106. Sales other, that's another big item, but that's pretty minuscule, and that's just vending machines. So we're at 41% of our budget. This number doesn't concern me because, again, we're going to be seeing our property taxes and other big monies come in throughout the fiscal year. Mm-hmm. So these pink numbers represent the recurring revenue over expenses. As you can see, there is a deficit balance where we're using our cash balance because the recurring revenue does not support the recurring expenses. Again, this number doesn't concern me. We have sufficient cash balance, and looking at historical data, this has always been the case in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And because we have such a healthy cash balance, we did use $1,072,965.15 to support that negative balance. So we're 69% of our expenses, 74% in payroll and related expenses, 60% in operational expenses. So we're under budget in both areas. Questions?
No, it looks healthy. Okay, looks good.
On to the next is special revenue funds. This is formatted similar, but because we have so many special revenue funds, it has a slightly different setup. Again, I wanted to emphasize on the areas of focus. So in this pink line item where it says recurring revenue over expenses NA, these are funds with cash balances for very specific purposes. The budget isn't dependent on these revenues. So a lot of these we won't really need to focus on unless you have specific questions. Okay. So corrections, those are fees that we collect for detention that's transferred at the end of the year. So far we have year-to-date actuals of $1979.69. Solid waste, this is an enterprise fund, and this is something that we should probably focus on. We have our beginning cash balance here, $1,494,101.16. Our actuals for July, August, and September, and you can see that our recurring revenue does not support the recurring expenses. So we're at 96% of our GRTs, so we're hitting that target, but we're not hitting the target for solid waste landfill user fees, and that pretty much supports the rate increase. But again, it has a healthy cash balance that was able to offset that negative amount. Okay, property valuation fund, again, this is miscellaneous fees collected. It's a supplement to their general fund budget, but expenditures aren't dependent on it. ARPA fund, we went over this at length a few weeks ago. So we already have an idea of how those funds are going to be expended. EMS grant, this is a grant. We budget according to the grant requirements. So once the funds are expended, the grant is renewed at the end of the year. So not a whole lot of focus on this one either. E911, we had a beginning cash balance of $4,101,525.63, a very healthy cash balance. The GRTs are on target, 91%. The miscellaneous is actually investment income. Because it's had such a healthy cash balance, we took some of that cash balance and invested it. So we're getting a nice return on that. We're at 110% over budget. Their recurring revenue supports their expenditures, and we have a ending cash balance of $4,124,974.42. Not going to touch too much on farm and range. That's budgeted. Fire Protection Fund, we have a beginning cash balance of $5,151,201. The recurring revenues at the end of the quarter do support the recurring expenditures, ending in a cash balance of $5,708,000. We're over and above our state fire marshal's allotment, and then we have some miscellaneous reimbursements and refunds, so we're in a good place there. These law enforcement protection grants, they're small grants for recruitment and miscellaneous expenditures. We're doing very well with lodger's tax, 98% of our revenues, 7% of our expenditures, ending cash of $1,168,520.76 for promotional. Non-promotional, we're 100% of our budget and 121% over on miscellaneous income, which is rental fees for public facilities. Okay, it's seniors, we're 109% over on our state grants, 76% over on our federal grants. The reason for this large variance is we saw a lot of prior year funds come in at the beginning of the new fiscal year. So some of that is attributed to the prior fiscal year. So that's why that looks a little lopsided there. But again, we're at 90% or 129% of our revenues and 90% of our expenditures. And at the end of the quarter, the revenues can support the expenditures by $39,941. Indigent fund, we have a healthy cash balance of $1,994,443.74. We're at 96% of our revenues and 60% of our expenditures. We do see that our recurring revenues did not support the recurring expenditures, and those are due to contracts, some large contracts that were paid out at the beginning of the fiscal year, but that's for the entire year. Fire excise tax fund, cash balance of $2,024,964.34, 98% of our revenues, 4% of our expenditures. ending cash of $2,207,354. So we're in a good position there. Again, these are our miscellaneous revenue accounts, clerks recording fees, miscellaneous fees that they collect, and then they have their own fund to supplement their general fund budget. Jail and detention, this is a cause of concern. We have a beginning cash balance of $1,745,824.30. The majority of this cash balance is attributed to transfers at the end of the fiscal year. This fund cannot sustain itself. So we have transfers in scheduled this year of $2,665,581.05. So consistently throughout the months, the recurring revenue cannot support the recurring expenses. At the end of the quarter, we have a deficit balance of $425,524.71. So as I mentioned when we met a couple of weeks ago, we really need to assess these funds, county funds that are unable to sustain themselves. And again, this is one we need to keep an eye on.
And Mr. Chair and Emily, is there any steps that we should be taking or need to be taking because that fund cannot sustain itself?
We've been transferring from the general fund and from other funds within the county to supplement the deficit balance. But again, I think that we really need to focus in on what's happening here at the county. And I know that quarterly reporting hasn't been done as we stabilize our finance department, but moving forward, maybe throughout the fiscal year as we see this fund fluctuate up and down as a commission, as the staff here, we can maybe come up with some ideas on how this could be addressed.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing it to our attention and for keeping your eyes on it. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Chair? So,
Commissioner Haley.
yeah, to kind of answer Commissioner Brush, I know at the New Mexico counties, there's some, we just approved a resolution, a lot of it is around jail and detention. And so I think there's, all counties have recognized and they're all in the same boat. So there's some legislation that hopefully will help.
And we did receive a grant for recruitment. So, but that still puts us in the same position. How do we retain once we recruit?
Right, okay. Yeah, so let's watch for that and let's make sure that we're advocating. Okay. So go.
Okay, rent to public facilities, nothing going on there. Opioid funds, we did get another disbursement of $27,327. We have a cash balance in this opioid fund of $2,209,144.08. Okay, I'm gonna just kind of pass by this wellness fund. And this is the election fund I was referencing earlier, where the election fees are parked in expenditures. EMS is another area of concern. Oops, did I pass by it? Okay. So EMS had a beginning cash balance of $447,832.25, and the majority of that cash balance is also attributed to transfers at the end of last fiscal year. We have scheduled this fiscal year transfers of $655,248.83. That is the amount that's needed to offset this deficit amount of this fund, even though we ended with the recurring revenues over expenses of $144,931.83. Historically, the recurring revenues cannot support the expenses. So that's another one that I'd like us to kind of focus in on throughout the fiscal year.
So Chair, if I may, I guess I'm a little bit, maybe not confused, but concerned that we did pass that GRT, or it passed, and yet we're seeing still a deficit. So am I like missing something? Is it just not sufficient? Are we?
No, well, we have a portion of our GRT, but a portion of it was also allocated to the town of Taos. So we're not seeing that full GRT amount
Right.
um,
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
specific fund. So we're at 105% of the GRT that we budgeted, but it's not enough to support the entire fund.
So the question then would be if we were not, if we hadn't agreed, and of course we did agree for a particular reason because they do also service the community, but if not, would it be sufficient? I'm just curious if that GRT would have carried if we weren't giving some to the town.
You
Do you
know,
know if it's sufficient?
I don't have enough of a history to speak into that at this time. It seems like that would be the case. But again, I would probably defer to Brent when he's available to kind of give us a background on how all that would work out. We do also see a grant that was received in this EMS of $450,000, and that's to support recruitment of new hires. And of course, emergency services is all fire funds as well. So these are all our emergency services, our firefighters. So I think that this is something that we should, again, focus on moving forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
LATCF, we spoke about this at length a few weeks ago, so all of that money is budgeted. And DWI, grant funds, they're expended according to the grant agreement, so not a whole lot to say there. Okay. And grants. So right now we're at 192% over budget on state grants. The reason for that is a lot of fourth quarter disbursements came in the first quarter. So it makes our state grants a little lopsided. But again, we are seeing those reimbursements coming back in. So that's good to see. 7% of our federal grants and 100% of our private grants. So we're over and above 151% and our expenditures at 97%. Questions on special revenue funds? Okay. Roads and infrastructure. Okay, so this first area here is Public Works. Public Works is also a fund that is struggling along, and again, based on history, it always has. So this year we have 1.3 million scheduled to transfer in to supplement that deficit balance. So recurring revenues do not support recurring expenditures. Even though we're hitting our GRTs, it's still not enough to sustain the fund. So we're at 81% of our revenue, 65% of our expenditures. Okay, this is our GRT 1/3 infrastructure, and these are our GRTs that we receive from the state for infrastructure purposes. Again, we're hitting all of our numbers on GRT. We're over and above in equalization. So that was a big disbursement that we got in. So we're 161% over budget on revenues, 2% under, or 2% of expenditures. With a healthy cash balance of $6,783,5856. Our grant match fund, we had budgeted $2.5 million for grant matches and temporary loans. Capital enhancement, we budgeted $2.5 million in transfers, and these are for capital projects to support the road and infrastructure. And then this is just a little fund that we're trying to expend. It doesn't really have much going on there. So that is and that is our quarterly progress. Over here, our year-over-year chart. So these are Here we go. So here's our beginning cash year over year. Last year, we were at 10,841,803.04. This year, we were at 13,145,768.75. So this is our beginning cash. Our revenues last year were at 1.78 or 1.74. This quarter to date, we're at 2.4 million in revenues. Payroll and related expenses, we did see a small jump, not very significant, and that was related to that 2% that we recently implemented. And operational expenses are very small variance, from 746 to 1,034,000. So we do see significant jumps in our cash and our revenues, but our payroll and related expenses and operationals are right around the same with a small variance. And then here's the revenue versus expenses. So as I mentioned, we did see that our recurring revenues did not support our recurring expenses by $1,072,000, where we had to utilize a portion of our cash balance. So last year, we had to use a greater portion of 1.4 million out of our cash balance. So this year, we have used quite a bit less. So I just wanted to emphasize the recurring revenue over expenses year over year. And then again, the variance in expenditures and the variance in revenues year over year. Okay, questions?
Any questions for Emma?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank to our finance team and to you, Emily, for presenting this morning. I'm just wondering if on what we have, we don't see the pie chart. Could we get that where you have it broken down by?
It was something that I was working on. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I can share it with you, but.
If and when it's ready. Yeah, thank you.
So I think year over year, to summarize everything that we have gone through, we have a healthy cash balance. We have a few funds that are area of concerns, but that's something that we're going to keep an eye on because we do have healthy cash balances in our GRT infrastructure and our general fund. We are able to supplement those funds that fall short. So it's not a major concern, but it's just something that I wanted to bring to your attention for full transparency and just keep an eye on going forward. Again, this formatting, I am open to suggestions. If it's difficult to understand, if you'd like more detail, I have more detail.
I actually like it, Chair, if I may, sorry. This is great. I think the only thing that might be helpful is if we had a column of what it was prior, so you're really seeing the difference. Let's say, for example, and you can tell me, and maybe others might not think it's needed, but in your first column, I mean, the first part that you presented, it shows current. I'm just wondering if we could have right before that what it was last year. And the reason why I'm saying is so we could actually see that difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, would that be difficult?
No, not at all. And that's the feedback that I was looking for. We want to be able to provide you with the information needed to make informed decisions, to, to use this as a tool to be able to help the commission along.
Right.
And so whatever is needed.
And Chair and Commissioners, the reason why I'm saying this is because often, well, we don't retain. It's very hard to remember what last year's was. And although you did a really good recap, but it just sometimes it's nice to see what it was, and then we can actually see how things are really changing, the differences. Yeah.
Exactly. And Mr. Chair, I'll add to that, because a trend tells us more than a single number, right?
Okay,
So
we would do a year-over-year comparison with presenting prior year information, current year information, and then the variance. Got it.
That could help, yeah.
Again, thank you for your patience. This is
Love
a
it,
new
though.
endeavor for Wendy and I. I'm a little over a year in the county, and Wendy is 6 months in finance, so
Good job.
we really appreciate your support and feedback.
Very good.
Thank you, Emily, for the recap and the financial report. The question I have is on the logistics of submitting the quarterly report. I know we had some issues in the fourth quarter last time. Have those been ironed out, or?
Yes, I'm working on fourth quarter reporting now. It's due by the 31st, so I've got a good handle on it.
Okay, great.
And I do have one more question, if I may, Chair. In regards to, I know it might be just slightly, maybe not entirely off topic, but making sure that everything that needs to get paid out gets paid out in time. There's definitely a tracking device, right, you all have in place to make sure that our contracts that we're
Yes,
not.
we do have a tracking mechanism, and county is net 30. So we try to stay within that net 30. One of the new process that we've implemented is our aging schedule, to look at our AP aging schedule to see if there's anything that exceeds net 30, 120, a lot of, or so on and so forth. A lot of the times, and what we have seen with timely payments is invoices are submitted to department heads submit to finance, so we can only process those as quickly as we receive them.
Right.
So we are counting on all department heads to submit those timely so they can be paid timely.
And our auditors actually look at that as well,
Yes, they
right?
do.
So although they do at random, they don't check every single one.
They check our processes to make sure that we're operating within the confines of our policy and procedure, and they also pull random samples, yes.
Okay, great, thank you, appreciate that.
If there are no further questions, comments, thank you again, Emily. We'll move to the consent agenda. We have a lengthy consent agenda, A through N, and number of items there. A lot of budget adjustments, issues related to design and renovations at the detox center. We have the senior citizen centers on there, the Peñasco Community Center, Cuesta Community Center. Is there any item there that any commissioner would like to further discuss? If not,
I move to approve the consent agenda as noted on our agenda.
okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Vehil to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Romero. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Romero? Yes. Commissioner Vehil?
Yes.
Commissioner Brush?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mascarenhas?
Yes.
Chair Romero?
Yes. And now we are at 11, Commissioners' reports, report and matters, new business to be considered at future commission meetings. Of course, we don't have the regularly scheduled, what would be the regularly scheduled November 5th meeting, but we probably will need to have a special meeting to do the canvassing after the election. And I'm thinking probably the 12th. I don't know if that's been confirmed. And then, of course, we want to remind everyone about the November 11th dedication of the cemetery. That's on Veterans Day, November 11th. Is there anything else that we need to talk about for future issues, items to be considered on commission meetings? None? Okay. Then commissioner announcements. No commissioner? Commissioner Hill.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a presentation over at the TCEDC that will take place upcoming now on November 6th. It's unlocking soil health funding. And so this is for individuals that want to connect and learn with fellow land stewards. So just wanted to put that out there. And so commissioners, if you're able to make it, that would be great as well. But it's going to be over at the Juan I. Gonzalez Ag Center. And once again, November 6th at 5:15 through 7:30. You do have to RSVP, they prefer that you do. So I think you all might have gotten it in your email. If not, and you're interested, let me know. If not, TCDC website as well. You can get that. So that's all I've got.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mascareñas.
just, I know that Taos Feeds Taos is having their annual breakfast Saturday. I believe, I don't know what time it starts exactly, but it's early, 7 a.m. So if anybody's interested,
Where is that
come
happening?
and eat breakfast. That's at the Bent Lodge. Yeah. So,
And Mr. Chair, just one other announcement. This afternoon, also at the Ag Center from 3 to 5, the 100% Community Initiative is, there's folks from NMSU where it kind of is housed and starts in the state. They're having a town hall in Taos this afternoon to discuss with the community our services around medical and dental care, behavioral health care, transportation, food, and childcare, and I might be missing another service. But if you're interested in how our community is showing up for those key services, this afternoon, 3 to 5 p.m., Town Hall at the Ag Center.
And I have one more.
Okay, Commissioner Hill.
Okay, the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area is hosting a balloon rally over at the Los Luceros property over the weekend. So if anyone wants to go out to Los Luceros, certainly early morning, kind of basically the same setup that they had here, but over there at Los Luceros, probably a little bit smaller, but up until Sunday. So early morning, late in the evening, and so hope y'all can make that. That's it.
Okay, I think we covered it all then. And I believe we're ready for adjournment.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Brush. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Romero? Yes. Commissioner Vehil?
Yes.
Commissioner Brush?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mascareñas?
yes.
Chair Romero?
Yes, yes, and the time is 9:45. Thank you all.
Good job.